I want to thank Reverend Masando for his beautiful talk last Sunday. Yes, yes. He spoke about grace and how we all have this opportunity to allow grace in our lives, to get out of our own way, so to speak, to create the spaciousness for the activity of the divine in our lives. And you know, I want you to just know that when I sit down to prepare this talk for you, I take into my heart the sort of energetic field and what is happening, what I'm gathering from what you tell me and from what I feel, from what I observe in the world and in our own community. And, you know, we are going through so much change right now. And there has been so much loss right now. And what I have observed is there has been this influx of people coming into our teaching. There's been so many people since the pandemic started in 2020 who were searching for something, for a truth that resonated with them, and they found us online. Hello, beloveds online, wherever you are watching us from, all over the world. There's a very real thing called pandemic flux syndrome. Have any of you heard of this? It's very interesting, and one of the aspects of it is that some people from a place of anxiety or fear will want to change something drastically in their lives. Have you noticed? It's been happening. It's interesting. Some people are leaving relationships. Some people are starting new relationships. Some people are moving. Some people are deciding to stay. We've had people, a few people in our community who have decided for whatever reason to leave. We've had far more people decide to join. But there is a reason for this, and it is rooted in all of that which we are experiencing right now. And I want to talk about that. I want to link that to our experience of God, to our experience of the divine, because what I'm getting is a lot of new people asking questions about this whole concept of God, and a lot of people who have been in this teaching for a very long time wanting to have a renewed experience of God. So wherever you are in that, this talk is for you. Sound good? Okay, all right. So we can consciously or unconsciously block our grace, as Reverend Masando spoke about so beautifully last week, or our good. We can block our connection with the divine, if you will, due to often unconscious, unhealed baggage around the very concept of God, the very concept of the divine, specifically religion, or more granularly, the actual word God. You know, I am interested today in spending some time unpacking that little letter word that starts with a big giant G, God, together. Hence the title of my talk today, Reclaiming That 3-Letter Word. Now, the definition of the word reclaim is to retrieve or recover something previously lost, which feels quite apropos because in many ways, many of us along our journey lost either the concept of God or God itself. Many of us discovered this community as a result of that, yes? So something to note, God did not just start communicating with us through sacred texts or the church or the prophets. That would mean that God had nothing to share 13.7 billion years before all of that happened. God didn't show up in the last nanosecond of geological time. That doesn't track. I love how Father Richard Rohr talks about this. He wrote, "From the first moment of the Big Bang, nature was revealing the glory and goodness of the divine presence." In the 19th century, the Catholic Church was grasping for authority in the face of rationalism and scientism, so they decided to declare that the Pope was infallible, meaning that he was incapable of making mistakes or ever being wrong. And then the evangelicals got into the power grab, adding to the mayhem, and they decided that in order for them to gain control and power, they would make the Bible inerrant, meaning the Bible is without error and is to be taken as absolute fact. This is a very new idea in the realm of geological time, so to speak. Despite the actual fact that we had gotten along hundreds and hundreds of years fine without either of those false beliefs about the Pope or the Bible, which really did a number on a lot of people and would have actually seemed idolatrous to early Christians. The word God, in many ways, has been hijacked. And it was hijacked early on. You know, in just about every single class I teach, the very first night, I ask by a show of hands, how many people even feel just an inkling of discomfort or a knee-jerk reaction or outright aversion to the word God or to other religious-y words, you know, Father, prayer, Jesus. And I will tell you that every single class, because people will go, yes, and then other people will be like, no, not at all. Oh, well, yeah, a little bit. Almost every hand goes up. Sometimes there are exceptions, but it's rare. Are you with me, Reverend Basando? It's every single time. Okay. So for the purposes of this talk, I want to just stick, for simplicity's sake, I want to stick with the word God, okay? But please feel free to insert whatever word you may take issue with this. This talk is meant to serve you wherever you may be on this topic. For me personally, for the longest time, even into the very beginning of my ministerial studies, the word Father being used for God was the source of discomfort for me in my body. You know, it's different for everyone. So I want to be clear. I understand that this conversation is not necessarily easy. For some folks, this particular subject may feel like a bit of a heavy lift. You know, you may be thinking, come on, this is New Thought. Why are we going there, Shannon? Why? Because I promise there's a payoff in the end. And what I know is that whenever there are any kind of knee-jerk reactions to concepts or an internal response that is disquieting around an idea, there's a deep call within us to gently inquire, to gently question it, to allow the revealing of healing around it. And just know you are in great company. You're in great company. The word Israel, the actual word Israel means to struggle with God, but ultimately triumph. That's what Israel means. The conversation that we're having today has been around for a very, 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 very long time. And as such, this ancient memory, this old call within us, if we choose to answer it, to be with this idea of God or Spirit and experience our own triumph, that is what I believe we are here to do in this spiritual community. To heal whatever has pained us in the past around this concept of God and religion. It's one of the reasons why we join together. So for those of you who are cool with the word God, but maybe you grew up in a conservative religion, but managed somehow in that to cultivate a relationship with the divine, like the Christian and Muslim mystics, maybe you consider God to be your loving friend, and you have a sweet relationship there. That's wonderful, that's great, congratulations. But maybe for you, it's actually the whole concept of religion, right? Religiosity that wigs you out, which I totally get. Let's face it. Religion has failed in many ways. It has been the source of enormous pain for people all over the world across time. So I invite you to keep the following in mind if you fall into that particular category. The word religion comes from religio, which actually means to reconnect. That's what religion originally meant. The process of forming community, in our case, a new thought, progressive, spiritual community for the purpose of, among other things, but mainly reconnecting, remembering God or Spirit in our life. That is what religion is actually supposed to be, a place of reconnection. I know that is what I feel when I am here, is that reconnection, that remembering of Spirit. I often joke that my atheist friends, the God that my atheist friends don't believe in is the same God that I don't believe in. I don't believe in that God either. I haven't for a very, very, very long time. I used to, but I don't anymore. My God has transformed, has changed. I get it, though. I really understand. There has been so much toxicity piled on top of the idea of God. Dun, 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 dun. Yes. A lot of it has been harmful. It's been baggage. I'll tell you, depending on where I am, I can clear a room at a party if someone asks me what I do for a living. To be a fly on that wall, I'm telling you. A very sarcastic God currently has a Twitter and Instagram account. If you've ever seen that, I'll sometimes be scrolling, and suddenly I stop and I'm like, I've got a message from God. That's their account, God. It's hilarious. I mentioned earlier the absolute edict that was handed down from desperate Christians wanting power, declaring that some man in the sky who was akin to some sort of galactic emperor, for many of us now, today, sounds somewhat absurd. I understand. And I feel it is very, 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 very important to say in this conversation that for some people, the monotheistic male God out there, perhaps even in the sky, actually brings comfort and safety. It is what works for them. And you will get zero judgment from me about that. However anyone experiences the divine is how they experience the divine. So I just want to preface all of this by really holding that in the energy of compassion and inclusivity. Now, when we hear a new thought use the word God, it is grace, as Reverend Masando talked about last week. God is the activity of love. God is energy. God is the goodness in the world. God is the soul of the universe. Now, I think to some extent, those concepts, those descriptors of God, God as qualities, may be easier for our brains to comprehend. But where I see folks get tripped up, even if they've been in this teaching for a very long time, is in that first picture or snapshot of God. That lingering image. It may be a nanosecond for some of you. When I ask you to picture God, to visualize God, for many folks, first, there is this super quick, very quick image of a person. Usually a man, an older man. And this may be quickly replaced by the qualities of God: love, grace, goodness, kindness. But I like to name things so we can transcend them. I know I had to do this for myself. So this may not pertain to you, that's fine. But this is true for a lot of folks. There is a good number of practitioners and ministers even that have this experience, that very first picture of God, or maybe when they're caught off guard, right? That can be a human being, an anthropomorphized God. And that can be a powerful instant when we're having this conversation about the divine. Maybe it stems from early childhood or being in a particular religion for a long time, but that initial snapshot can cause a lot of people to throw the baby out with the bathwater. People see that image in their minds and they say, forget it. There are several studies that have been done here in the United States that show that when asked to imagine God, the majority of the people in these different studies invariably describe a human being with superhuman abilities. In his book, God, A Human History of Religion, Reza Aslan writes, "The compulsion to humanize the divine is hardwired in our brains, which is why it has become a central figure in almost every religious tradition the world has known. And when you think about it," he writes, "what better way to remove the barrier between human beings and God than by making God a human being?" So it does have its benefits. It certainly did have its benefits. However, whenever there is an abuse of power, especially by clergy, that completely backfires. This was reinforced by the traditional take of the "we are made in the image and likeness of God" idea found in the scriptures, even in Islam, where they are very, very, very clear in their belief that God cannot be confined to one particular image, human or otherwise. That's why you won't ever see, any depictions in mosques or statues of what Allah may look like. That is considered totally, totally sacrilege. However, Islam's refusal to depict God in human form did not translate into a refusal to depict God in human terms. Muslims are just as likely as other people of faith to describe God with their own virtues and feelings and failings. So this whole "we are made in the image and likeness of God" notion can often trip people up and create all sorts of confusion and unrealistic expectations, or just negativity in general, depending on their experience. Are you with me? All right. But all of this said, I have another take on this whole idea for you to consider. I do believe that we are made in the image and likeness of God. However, I believe that it has nothing to do with what human beings actually look like. The word image is from the original Latin, meaning to copy or to imitate. That's what image means. It means to copy something. We have incarnated here, my friends, to love, to serve, to remember. We have incarnated here, my friends, to be of God, of spirit. And we are here to practice the activity of love by copying or imitating or replicating the qualities of God while we are here on earth for each other. How cool is that? The image of God is the greatest thing about us, but it has nothing to do with what we look like. It has everything to do with how we behave in the world, how we treat each other in the world. The image of God is our compassion and kindness in those moments when we soften and where we laugh uncontrollably and where we create art and where we discover more science and where we share this image of God when we forgive and when we give and when we forgive and when we give more. That is the image of God that I am talking about in this community for each of us. The true image of God within us is the most true, the most powerful, the most glorious, magnificent self. And we can reclaim that within ourselves. Remember, to reclaim is to retrieve or to recover something previously lost. If we can remember our inherent worth, we can reclaim that divine image for ourselves. We, my loves, are the original blessing, not the original sin. God lives and breathes that activity. It's the activity within us that lives through us. And when we live from this place of integration with Spirit, then we can truly reclaim God in all its fullness without the CRAP. We can reclaim God. We can take back God in our lives in the truest sense, in the original sense, in the mystical sense of what it always was meant to be. The first and oldest living religion, Hinduism, talks about this beautifully. Thousands, some say between 7,000 and 10,000 years before the man Jesus walked the planet. It was mystical. The idea of the relationship with the divine was mystical. And then it just got lost. It just got lost. Spirit, source, God is the great connector of all of us. And this is seen throughout science and runs through every atom in the universe. One of the things I love the most about our teaching, about New Thought, is our very rational recognition of the connection between science and spirituality. You know, on the very first page of the very first chapter of his textbook, the very first sentence Ernest Holmes wrote was, "We all look forward to the day when science and religion shall walk hand in hand through the visible to the invisible." It's the first sentence. There was a study done here in the United States of scientists in universities, and they found that although only a small subset of those particular scientists identified with religion in the traditional sense, the majority of them actually considered themselves spiritual in some way. And interestingly, their sense of spirituality was congruent with their views about science. There's a new thought. My mom sent me a video recently. Hi, Mom. She watches every Sunday, by the way. She sent me a video that was, has been making the rounds on social media. And it was created by a gentleman up in Alberta, Canada, by the name of Dr. Mike Sosterik. He's a professor of sociology, and he does a lot of really cool work connecting science and spirituality. And his company did a video explaining Einstein's 3 stages of God and religion. I know some of you, Liz, I know you saw that on my page. And he basically, really synthesizes Einstein's view of this in this video. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's based on Einstein's book, The World as I See It. It's very well done. And here's the idea. Einstein explained his view of God and religion in 3 distinct stages. Stage 1, this is according to Albert Einstein. Stage 1 of God and religion was the tribal stage. According to Einstein, tribal religion was based on fear of the natural world. In this first stage, humans used magic, ritual, and sacrifice to gain control over powerful and often destructive natural forces. Einstein wrote, in stage 1, with primitive humans, it was fear that evoked religious notions, fear of hunger, wild beasts, sickness, and death. So that was stage 1. Now fast forward a couple millennia-ish, okay? In stage 2, Einstein explained, from his viewpoint, religion was based on civilization and the existential and emotional pain caused by it. In this stage, in stage 2, humans create a father figure or a mother figure, a God who could protect them, nurture them, and provide them with psychological and emotional support. Einstein wrote, this stage 2 is the God of providence who protects, disposes, rewards, and punishes. Here in the West, this is the stage and God of many of our childhoods. But then Einstein talks about a 3rd stage, A third stage. He felt that the third stage was based on a mystical experience. In this stage, people in societies put fear and superstition and anthropomorphic or human-like projections of God behind them. They lay that down and instead they embrace spiritual, transcendent experiences. In this third stage, Einstein said people would develop a cosmic religious feeling that were strong motivators of science and that both science and art would play a large role in encouraging spiritual experiences. Most importantly, Einstein thought that this advanced or third stage of human religion could, if it was purely purified and purged, cure our social ills and help save the planet. Isn't that beautiful? Einstein believed that achieving a mystical relationship with God would save our planet. What a visionary. What a visionary. I'm all for that. Are you for that? Yes. 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 But here's the deal. We cannot reclaim something, which again is to retrieve or recover something previously lost, until it has been healed. Yes, we all want mystical experiences with the divine, but if there is anything unhealed within us about or around the concept of the divine, that won't happen. That gets in the way. We see, that there are so many opportunities for us to reclaim. But first, we must heal. This is very true of the words that we use, including any word associated with God. So I want to give you some examples of how people have used this idea of reclaiming something as a transformational tool. We see this at play in spaces that have been historically marginalized. Take the LGBTQIA space. The word queer was originally a derogatory word, often used to be cruel. But beginning in the 1990s, it was triumphantly reclaimed by many in the gay community as not only a descriptor, but as an identity to be proud of. It was reclaimed, but it had to be healed first. Look at the body positivity spaces. For many folks, the word fat has been reclaimed and is being used as a revolutionary word to describe identity that brings power and pride as opposed to shame or pain. That word has been reclaimed, but healing had to happen first. I think we have a lot to learn from this, my friends. For those of us here in these progressive spiritual spaces, I am inviting us to reclaim the word God as an unapologetic affirmation that we have healed within us those first and second stages of a God out there and an oppressive religion. That we have triumphantly moved into the third mystical stage of spiritual development, the place where God is experienced within us and all around us. Let me give you an example of how we're moving from stage 1 and stage 2 and claiming the third stage, mystical experience of God. We are not here to pray to God. The ineffable force of life doesn't need our prayers. Our prayers are for us. We are here to pray from God, from the image and the likeness of the divine within us. God isn't something to be reached for out there. God is the energy of love to be recognized right here in each other. When we really get that God is present right here in this breath, on the breath, take a breath. when we get that God is present, fully present in that breath, not out there somewhere. We have reclaimed, we have retrieved, we have found, we are experiencing God in the most cosmic and mystical sense. In New Thought, we teach that God is the life force everywhere present. I love how Elizabeth Barrett Browning explains this. She wrote, Earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. Oh, seriously? Go, Elizabeth. I mean, every common bush afire with God. So this week, my friends, I invite you to gently notice that life force, God, even in the smallest things, the birds singing, the rain, the sunshine that comes out. You know, your own divine impulse to serve others. Think about it, just this week, you all put together 15 complete resettlement kits. Yes, to support our Afghan siblings who are moving here to Oregon. That is the activity of the image and likeness of God within you. Just notice this week how you are seeing and relating to God in your life. If you happen to get that first initial picture of a human God, maybe in the sky or far away, that may reward or punish, just gently notice that so that you can begin to really create space for a new thought about that, to make that conscious within you so that you can move past that. If you find yourself dismissing the religion or the religiosity of others, which can show up in politics, I invite you to gently bring your divine likeness to that moment and allow your generosity of spirit to be compassionate in that moment. You do not have to agree, but you can be kind. Meister Eckhart said, every creature is a word of God and a book about God. Every creature, all of us, are a word of God and a book about God, whatever stage we may be in. So my friends, we can hold, with a capital H, we can hold the word God or any other religious words that have in the past challenged us in a new and in a different way, in a mystical way. I wholeheartedly invite you into the practice of reclaiming the word God or whatever word makes you squirrely from a place of empowerment rather than disempowerment. Reclaim God from a place of pride rather than shame. Reclaim God from a place of divine identity rather than separation. Because in truth, there is no separation. We are one with each other, all creatures, and we are one in God.